Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Again, welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Mike Graff, and I make music as Dear Gravity. It is wonderful to be here together with you. I'm super excited for you to get the chance to hear from Marshall Usinger of Be Still the Earth today. But before we dig into that conversation, I, of course, want to say a big thank you to the premier music licensing site for all things ambient and cinematic music. Of course, I'm talking about All Ambient. If you're a creator that doesn't want to dig through an endless catalog of music that might not be the best fit, All Ambient is the perfect licensing site for you. All Ambient has expertly curated song bundles that are all designed around a unique theme to fit your film, video, or project perfectly. And there's no annual subscription fee either. You only pay for what you need. It is a great solution for your music licensing needs. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. That's all-ambient.com. If you stick around, we do have an exclusive promo code for our podcast listeners that we'll share in just a little bit. My guest today is Marshall Usinger of Be Still the Earth. Marshall is a force to be reckoned with in the ambient music scene amidst other genres as well. I am so very excited to explore the territory we did in this conversation, really addressing some heart stuff, some head stuff, and getting under the hood on what it is to be a creator. You're not going to want to miss this one. Here is my conversation with Marshall Usinger of Be Still the Earth. All right, well, my guest on the All Ambient podcast today is a fellow creative, someone who is carving a really unique lane in the ambient world, and also someone who I get to consider a close friend and a collaborative partner. We've worked on a lot of stuff together. Marshall Usinger, welcome to the All Ambient podcast.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. And well, I got to see you yesterday too, anytime. So it's like...
This is true. So yesterday I was out in Denver taking some photos for Dear Gravity. But since you live in Denver, Marshall, we did some photos for our upcoming collaborative. It's not a collab project. It's a whole new moniker. It's a whole new thing. But we can let that be a little bit of a surprise for the listeners, if you will. But it was fun to do a photo shoot for that too, and also eat some crazy tacos. And you made my day. So thanks for that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a great time.
Man, we're here, and I'm so glad that we get the chance to connect a little bit. I know that there's a lot of people who know you from multiple avenues, from all the stuff that you do with your kind of signature style, and also, again, this new wave of momentum that's happening with Slow Echo, and I'm really excited to dig more into what's really lifting off there. But before we get to all of that fun stuff, I don't even know if I know the answer to this question. I would love to hear how you got started in music, or was there kind of a moment where all of a sudden there was this memory of you kind of hearing something or playing something for the first time and it started unlocking in you? What's your story? Where did it all get started?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple moments that stand out, but I did the band thing like a lot of us for a little bit. And when I stopped doing that, I started to just get really into music, really into film music and, the music in movies that I liked a lot. And one particular one that stands out to me as was a moment of I would like to make music like this was in Moneyball. Moneyball with Brad Pitt, which is a great movie. They played The Mighty Rio Grande, This Will Destroy You. And that was one of the central themes of the movie. And I felt like it was so perfect and so impactful just for how the scenes were playing out. And that was one of the first moments, because I didn't have much of a background in production or how to record anything. I just kind of was a guitar player. I was a fan of those bands, but just it seemed like at that time, Explosions in the Sky and that stuff was kind of everywhere. And I kind of thought to myself, that would be cool to make music that, supported visual elements or films or whatever it was. And that's kind of when I just started getting into trying to learn how to record myself and start doing music that way. And so it kind of went from playing in bands and doing more of that to, just working on my own. And I kind of fumbled my way through learning Logic and recording guitar and started doing that. And kind of started getting into music licensing, just how things unfolded. That was kind of fortunate too. So it was kind of like a small progression of, I met some guys in Nashville and I had recorded some stuff that was, fine. It was really like not great. I mean, at least like at that time, I liked it a lot, but I was the quality was not great, but they were starting a company and they were like, you can put your music on our site and people, can use it for YouTube videos and things like that. And so that was kind of how it got started. But it was like the initial, I'm a big fan of the Friday Night Lights score and certain movies that use, those Sigur Rós tracks. And that was kind of the thing that really like sparked something in me for just wanting to, it wasn't just make music that supported a film. Like that was a piece of it, but it was more so like the way that music was making me feel in the moment.
Yeah.
Having the visual elements tied to it, but it was also just kind of that particular like thing of, wow, like I kind of want to dive into what it might look like for me to make music this way.
Yeah. And when I listen to your stuff, I think you have a really unique way of exploring what that looks like for you, for Marshall, for all the Beast of the Earth and beyond that, all the different projects you've been involved in. But you have a way of stirring, not necessarily like stirring an image into my head, but just like allowing for that music to be deeply impactful, regardless of some sort of narrative with lyric or some sort of narrative with an image running through it. Like that's, I think I heard it said recently, it's just like, to create music that literally kicks you in the chest, like makes your heart drop without using a single word. And I see you running after that wholeheartedly, and you do a great job at it. So
thanks, man.
Good work, man.
Thank you. You do as well. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big, everyone needs to know I'm a big fan of what Dear Gravity does. And, man. Yeah. Those moments, man, it's kind of like, that's what I feel like we chase, You're like, when you're creating something like that, you're kind of chasing that thing of like, okay, this is stirring something, and that's kind of like at the core of it. I mean, it's like the best part about it, when you come across that as like an accident or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to send you your check later for giving me a kind mention. So.
Yeah.
Man, so I've always been curious and I've always learned something whenever I ask this. But when you think about your creative process, Marshall, and whether that's like what it looks like on your calendar or what it looks like when you just sit down to write or whatever, what does your creative process look like? Like, is there something unique about it for you, or is the uniqueness the fact that there's really nothing unique at all and it's just very, by the book and you just get it done? But like, what does your world look like in creative process from start to finish?
Yeah. Well, kind of the creative process as like maybe getting something started, so to speak. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. I feel like because with me, it's hard for me to adhere to a set of what I feel like is rules within like what I need to be doing on a certain day, because I do a lot of, I get to make a lot of different music for different projects, and that can look anything like a kind of happy, clappy car commercial to, something dark and horror trailer. And so there's these different things and different kinds of music. And I've always kind of like, when I look at my week or look at my day, I do often find myself thinking, like, what do I have the mental capacity to focus on today? And what do I feel kind of like is something I'm going to be able to best approach? And in the end, hopefully get something completed. Maybe not just completed start to finish in one day, but just as far as what can I do that's going to make me feel like my energy is being used well?
Yeah.
Once I get my head wrapped around that, if I'm working on a particular project or something like that, like my process can be for the most part sort of like from the ground up, just with building a piece of music or like a soundscape kind of thing. Like I really like to just kind of start from scratch, or maybe like a very simple chord progression or like a bass line. I feel kind of like if we're using like, I don't know, let's use like the This Will Destroy You stuff as like an example. Like I love just throwing out a chord progression and maybe building some melodic elements over it or some different instrumentation, and then kind of like layer and layer and layer, and then like start pulling stuff back, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like in some sense it's almost like sometimes I'm building the piece backwards. Like I'm throwing everything into the session, like record an electric line, maybe record some percussion or piano. And it's like, actually I'm working on a commission piece for a client where I kind of had like a very simple melodic piano line, just starting it out, and kind of built it around that. And eventually realized just with the rest of what happened, like that the piano line just wasn't working. It just wasn't fitting with everything else. And so I ended up just doing like some Juno sounding chords kind of thing with, similar progression. But this particular instance is just like a good example of sometimes of how it might start with piano or guitar. And it took quite a while into it to be able to tell myself like, let's try something else,
Yeah.
This isn't really fitting. Like there's something about it that's not sticking. So yeah.
Well, and good for you. I mean, not to interrupt you, but like good for you to stick up for the best. Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday. Like what is the best answer for the song, right? And to like, there is something really sweet about having kind of a period of creating and then another period of curating, if you will, where like, yeah, you've thrown a whole bunch of paint at the wall and now it's time to start stripping some of it back. But yeah, I'm honestly like, I know that there are, myself included sometimes, but there are plenty of people who once they've recorded something, it's just like that track or that part is pretty much gospel truth, right? Like that has to be, it has to be used. I recorded it. Mm-hmm. It's a thing. But for you to, this last one being a real active example, you need to keep listening to the song itself and like what is serving the song itself. And I love your attentiveness to that. I think that goes a long way. And for you to have to make the hard call of like, dude, I literally built this song around this singular line. And then for that line to be the precious darling that gets killed in, the second act or the third act or whatever, you did it and you've done it well. And that's a daring thing to do. So props to you for doing so.
Yeah. You're right though, that it's like, it got to a point where I kind of realized it's almost like I'm spending more time like agonizing about how to make this part work than I am finding a different piece, In the beginning, I had trouble like with that stuff being like, I recorded my piano, like I recorded my real piano for this. I took how much ever time like setting up mics and doing that, and I have to make this work. But I think when you're in the practice enough, it's a really good testament to just being able to acknowledge some growth with yourself as, okay, like I can let this go because I just know that it's just not sitting right or it's not feeling right. And being able to have the awareness and take the time to do that really can be, I feel it can be like a little stressful if you make it that way. And I used to get stressed out about that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so different with, something like a more traditional composition for a YouTube video or something like that versus if you bring it over to something more like ambient music. Like, I think there's elements of that there too, where maybe it's not so much about the particular part, but about, things that, like that's when I mentioned about like muting stuff. That's been such a good practice for me, is if you have 20 tracks in a session and you're kind of listening to a big part, and I just start muting things and I'm kind of like, oh, when I mute this, there's a lot more clarity in the guitar part, or this loop that I started this ambient piece of music with a loop from this pedal, and like now everything I've built around it just sounds a lot better without that loop. That's been the best way that I've been able to like get to a place confidently of where something needs to be, is being able to strip things back a bit and just, you kind of like get a good feeling when it's sitting right,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I'd even be curious. It'd be funny not funny, haha, but funny in like a curious sort of way. If you were to shelve an idea like that piano line or like that, some loop that you created that then needs to disappear later, if you were to like swing at that again 12 months from now, and like where the song that wound up becoming the song and the loop or the piano part came out of, or, like you subtracted it, but now you don't have the earworm in your head anymore where you're thinking about the song and you're marinating on the song. Like it's far enough in the past where you can almost like try it all over again. I'd be curious if something kind of magical. And with how much you grow in your craft over a year, and it'd be fun to see if maybe there's another thing that happens.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, occasionally I do that. Like you go back and open up a session from 6 months ago, and I feel like most of the time it's like, I can see why
garbage.
I see why I put this away at the moment.
Yes,
but,
that's how I feel. Yep.
Every now and then, though, maybe you get a little something, but
a little tasty surprise.
Yeah, man.
That's cool. So, Marshall, Be Still the Earth, you're crushing it. I've loved your vibe and your approach from day one, and we've gotten to do some great stuff together collaboratively as Be Still the Earth and Dear Gravity together. But I know recently, I think it was just shy of a year ago, kind of in addition to what had already been happening with Be Still the Earth, all of a sudden, Slow Echo came onto the scene, which for those who are listening who may not already be familiar, Slow Echo is a sub-label of Echoes Blue that's specifically aimed at more of a meditative drone, maybe isn't the right word, but more of a kind of a minimal, real soundscape based approach to ambient music. And I know that you have a really pivotal part in that as one of the the co-founders of Slow Echo, but kind of at the same time, like you continue to make more music as Be Still the Earth and release some of that on the Slow Echo label. And man, there's been some really cool traction that I've seen out there in the world with what you've been doing on that. And I'm curious your mindset on how that just kind of informs all that you do as Be Still the Earth. Because it's not as though it's different, though the Slow Echo stuff is different from what you did beforehand or what you've done since as Be Still the Earth, but it is a little bit of a different emphasis in that. And so, yeah, I'm just curious, like your perspective on what it means to get a whole bunch of momentum in a lane that feels maybe, just slightly left of center from where you originally started out at. Has that now become the new center, or just where you at?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you kind of nailed it just in the sense of, I don't know, it was almost kind of like the progression of doing things when I started working, like when I met you guys, met Ben and Echoes Blue, and was kind of doing some things that were a bit more, call it compositional, with a lot more melodic elements and things like that. As we talked about Slow Echo, the idea, and kind of started just brainstorming on what it might look like, and I kind of got into the space of what would it look like for me to make music like this that's just a bit more, not busy, but, just not as many things going on. Mm-hmm. And I guess the central things that we were looking for and were interested in with hearing what people would make, the artists that we were talking with about this was like, what kind of music would you make as an artist if you could kind of like do something that was whatever kind of stripped back looked like to you as an artist. And if I told you to make music that sounded like it had really like a warm, soothing, inviting, peaceful sound, what would that look like to you as an artist? And that's what I was kind of approaching it with too. And I think for me, that was really, it turned out just to be something that, it seemed to, I guess I kind of grabbed onto it just in the sense of like, I think a lot of that, my guitar kind of background and like, I was able to start playing with that a bit more with some effects and looping stuff and, not being so focused on like chord progression for, going from a soft beginning and a little B section and then another section, but it was more about really looking for the sounds that sounded like really natural and smooth and, not like I was scrolling through a digital synth type thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of different subgenres, I guess, of ambient music. And there is music has more of a colder kind of feel to it, where it's got almost like a more electronic sound, and that's kind of its own thing. And then, so with Slow Echo, we were just talking about like, hey, we kind of want this to feel very natural. And I think one of my favorite, I guess, examples of that is that Ben has this tongue drum thing that he just recorded on one of the first pieces that we did together. And yeah, I mean,
it's a vibe.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. That's something that I wouldn't have necessarily reached for if you were thinking about ambient music or like making a soundscape. And I mean, it's nothing that I've ever played, but he had this thing and kind of was like, yeah, just kind of played around on it. Like, I think it was like a 2-chord thing he was going back and forth with. And I kind of recorded a little synth line over it. And I think that was the first track that we did. Yeah. So once I kind of unlocked some of that, being able to keep things very minimal, and it was more about looking for, just the sounds and things that I could do that were different, that might not fit into like a regular compositional type piece, but were more droney, and things that were slowed down, or, I might just record some notes on my piano and slow them way down or pitch them down. And so, I think to answer your part of the main question, like, I've been in a spot with the Be Still the Earth stuff where I do feel like this is kind of, at least for now, it's a spot that I feel really good about and want to kind of stick with as far as like kind of the core sound of it. Just because, it seems like there's something there that's sticking, and whatever, like the algorithm stuff that's kind of its own thing too. But I have a conversation frequently with people where, or fellow, composers and stuff, where it's like, well, sure, what am I going to do next? I need to do something next. And, do I need to go back to doing neoclassical stuff, or do I want to make like an electronic, dark, cinematic album or something like this? And I've got to a spot of being okay with like, this is working. I like making this kind of music. And so until I feel really strongly about like, it's time to do something different, or I'm going to try something else, like, I'm very happy to kind of stay within, this kind of like Slow Echo, ambient, more meditative side. And I really quite, I like making it a lot too. So it's been really good, man.
Yeah, well, and I mean, obviously there's been a lot of positive response to it. So that's, and not that that's the definitive factor for why we would decide to do something. It certainly shouldn't be, but it is a nice vote of affirmation in the hard work you put into it. So keep it on, man.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Marshall, you've got so many great pieces of music all over the All Ambient catalog. Tell me, is there anything that you're working on right now that's coming out soon, or anything currently in the hopper or getting ready for release that you're excited about? Little secrets?
Actually, man, not really.
Okay, well, man, it's been great talking. And I'm completely kidding.
No, actually, I think rear. No, this is my curse, is I can't decide what I want to do next. But I am currently thinking a bit about two things. One is, yes, I'm going to be doing something else for Slow Echo. I'm actually working on a couple collaborative projects. And when I say a couple, I only mean 2 and not many collaborative projects, because I did that a lot last year. And I think that's why I'm having a little bit of somewhat of a lull now with releasing things, is I was kind of like just wiped at the end of last year. And I had, maybe a single here and there come out at the beginning of this year. But I'm kind of looking at, doing another Slow Echo release and what that might look like. And I am hopefully going to be doing another release with Echoes Blue also, because I haven't done anything there for kind of a minute, at least since last year sometime. So, but that is kind of where I get a bit caught up with, like, it's almost like I get worried about how it's going to sound before I even start making it. You know what I mean? I'm too anxious about what I want it to be when I just really need to just sit down with it and kind of see how things are feeling, man. But at least on the end of like artistically things that I'm excited about, and not to dive too much, but some of the stuff that you and I are making together is just some stuff that I'm excited about and kind of like just putting some time into these days. So that's kind of keeping that motivation, excitement going on being a creative and keeping the energy to keep doing it. And yeah.
Absolutely. Well, clearly, no matter what you do, it's going to turn out, with all of your standard Marshall excellence. So I can't wait to listen.
I hope so.
It's going to be great.
Thank you.
Okay, Marshall, we've arrived at the all ambient lightning round, and I am so very excited to hear what you are going to say to these questions.
Okay.
So here we go. You can't overthink them. You just got to blurt. Cool?
Yeah, I'm good.
What are you currently geeking out about right now? Music, band, gear, plugins, something like that. What are you geeking out about right now?
Recording drums is what I'm geeking out about.
Love it.
I love it. I spend way too much time doing it, but I'm obsessed with it. Yeah.
That's awesome. It is an art form in and of itself, for sure.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Okay. What is one weird thing about you that people do not know?
Weird? Oh man, what's a weird thing? All right. If we're playing like two truths and a lie, something people don't know about me and that I don't go around broadcasting is that I went to preschool with the Olsen twins, and I have a little class picture with them.
What on earth? Are you serious?
So I was born in the LA area, and so I went to, I don't know if it's a daycare or preschool or whatever, but I have a little preschool shot with the Olsen twins, and
that's.
But I don't know. I feel like, is that anything to stand on now? I'm not sure.
No, if question number 2 in the all ambient lightning round existed only for you to give that answer right then and there, it has done its purpose. That is so. I just feel like a better person.
Yeah,
now. Oh my
I know.
goodness.
It's like,
that's
and
amazing.
now it's like in a way, the Olsen twins because of that.
Man, they were down on the set of Full House. And, oh my gosh, I love that. What would you tell the beginning musician version of yourself? Like if you could go back 20 years and just give yourself a little nugget of truth, an earlier version of yourself, what would you say to early musician you?
If we go back to my early musician self, it would have been keep taking lessons, because I took lessons for a while. I even started taking some classical guitar lessons, and I really wish I would have stuck with that, dude.
Yeah.
And I don't even really quite know why I stopped, but it's one thing I always look back on. Like I can kind of read music if I'm on a guitar, but that's one thing I wish I would have stuck with. If I was talking to myself on the end of this and what we do now, my answer is always don't buy so many plugins and virtual instruments.
Truth. Yep.
I mean, God, the amount of money I spent on that stuff, I wish I could take back, but it's part of it, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and, just to qualify that doesn't mean like don't get the tools that you need, but, rather more so, if I'm hearing you right, it feels more like you're saying the answer to you maybe jumping over this creative hurdle isn't necessarily, I need to just throw some more money at this thing that's going to solve all my problems, but rather like what knobs am I not twisting that I maybe should be, or what approaches am I not trying that I could, or have I done everything possible with what I already have that might provide exactly what this song or what this moment or whatever it is needs. I think I'm hearing you right when you answer it. Is that kind of the lane we're going?
Yeah, I think there's the gist, I think, is it's like when you kind of get into this and start making cool stuff. There's all this cool stuff that's coming out all the time. There's a cool, wow, there's so many string libraries or whatever it is, and I need all of them. But and then you get to the point of like, well, can I start this piece of music, or do I need to scroll through 1,000 presets to find, what I'm looking for, kind of thing. So at that point, it becomes a bit of a hurdle of, overwhelming amount of choices. And I think if I could offer any encouragement to anyone getting into this, it would be to get a tool or a couple tools that are worth the investment up front or whatever it might look like, and get to know those really well before you kind of start feeling like you might need something else, or just don't go overboard with it. Because I think a lot of us do that, I'm sure. But yeah, there's so much out there that is like, I mean, there's amazing tools out there, and I definitely want all of them. But yeah, I wish I'd simmered a little bit.
Yeah. And honestly, I think we should end there. I was going to ask as a final question, like, what advice do you have for someone wanting to follow in your footsteps? But I think, I mean, that piece of advice right there is just so, there's so much wisdom in it, because like there are so many things that we can just kind of invent ourselves that stop us from moving forward and continuing to create well. And so I think that's a big one that you hit on. And it's kind of the musician / composer / producer version of a person who wants to keep getting better at their golf game. So they just keep buying more and more clubs and more expensive this and that, instead of like getting to know their form. And, you know, and when I use this club on this type of lay, then it's going to start hooking or whatever, you know, it's kind of our version of that. And I'm just really grateful for you calling it out on what it is, because it will in turn cause us to make decisions that just push us further down the road of making great things. So thanks for calling us out, calling us all out on that. That's a good thing.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah. Well, man, I know we're going to get the chance to keep making great stuff together, but I am so glad that we got the chance to chat here on the All Ambient podcast. You are a gentleman. You are a scholar. You are someone who is giving a gift to a lot of people, because you are being faithful to creating what you do. So thanks so much for doing that. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Music throughout today's episode was all from Be Still the Earth's catalog, and you can find all of this music along with a bunch of other incredible songs, bundles, and other resources from an amazing group of composers and producers at all-ambient.com. And be sure to use the promo code podcast25. That's podcast25. And you'll get 25% off of any product at all-ambient.com. It's a great opportunity to save even more on an incredible resource for your next film, video, or project. Don't wait for another second. Head over to allambient.com and use promo code podcast25. Again, that's podcast25 to get 25% off of your next purchase. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time. I hope that you are too. Can't wait to see you then. And until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping that this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. See you next time.